So this is a conclusion that we had yesterday to a story that really is about 9 years old. You guys who have been following a lot of this like Chicago drill stuff like from the beginning may remember this story. DJ Academics had covered it on his channel, The Warren Chirac, about a father he was saying who wasn't cooperating with police in the death of his son. And this was a young boy named Amari Brown. He was only 7 years old. His father's name was Antonio. Okay, now his father he's a four corner hustler, okay, gang member from the west side of Chicago, and there was a lot of heat coming down on the father at the time that this had happened. Okay, the boy was shot, and everybody was saying at the time the father was the intended target. That information, really, from all indications now, appears to have been incorrect, and also kind of the stuff that people were saying about, well, the father is not snitching on the killers and stuff. That really is a lot of misinformation as well. And a lot of this now has come to light, and it just proves how some of this stuff doesn't come to light until years later. But even at the time, so the people blowing really were other foes. Okay. And two of these guys now have been convicted, and they're from a faction of foes called the Black Flag Four Corner Hustlers. And these guys are from like it's west side, but really kind of like northwest side. Their hood is over by Pulaski, like in Division. Chicago police have them listed over by like Division to Augusta, and then Harding to Pulaski. Okay, so we're talking about 2 blocks, north and south area. It's really like a few block like area total. The father was also a foe, although I don't think from that same set. I don't know though. But as I mentioned to you guys before, on the far west side, well, not far west side, like the middle of the west side, there's a lot of four corner hustlers beefing with other four corner hustlers. I mean, that's like a huge thing out west. It's kind of like the GDs, like up north and out south, how a lot of the GDs are into it. Unfortunately, that's happened. That's happened with the foes. Like I said, it appears now that the father was actually not the intended target. So I'm not saying that he was in tool with these guys, but when they were saying, well, he's not snitching and stuff. First of all, he may not have even known, and then secondly, he'd be snitching on other foes. So even though there's different sets now, a lot of that is still like I still know four corner hustles that have kind of like this like gang affiliation loyalty to like other foes across the city. Now there may be a particular set that they don't get along with, but I'm just saying in general, like a lot of them still adhere to that, especially out west. It's a little bit more old school mentality out there. At the time, they were saying that the father was the intended target. Gary McCarthy was the police chief at that time. The police were insisting that. The prosecutors of the trial said he was not the intended target. So, but anyways, the two guys who got convicted are now in their late 20s, and it was two juries. They found the guys guilty of killing the 7-year-old just hours after closing arguments. And one of the guys' name is Jamal. He's 29, and the other guy's name is Rashid. He's 28. They're both foes. The father was a foe. So all basically members of the same overarching gang, and each faced 1 count of murder for killing Amari after they opened fire on a crowded street on the 4th of July of 2015. And they also faced counts of attempted murder for wounding a woman and firing at a man who the prosecutor said was the true target of the attack. So that was not the father. So all the stuff that they were saying, well, the father was the real intended target and it's his fault that Amari's dead, none of that was true. None of that was true, man, and it's all come to light now. So both men were found guilty on all 3 counts, and Amari was shot in the back while he was watching the fireworks. The unintended victim, they said, of what Cook County prosecutors said was an attack stemming from a long-standing gang conflict in the neighborhood that had been ongoing for months, including a different shooting that happened earlier the same day. So these two guys had been tried separately, but in tandem since the trials started last week. And both cases were being presided over by the judge, Nicholas Cantas, who they have different juries as each man pointed the finger at the other in their defense. So very interesting, man. And I told you guys time and time again, this is always how it goes. The two guys were pointing the finger at each other. Okay, the two homies, supposedly, that rode on this drill together, man, they were pointing the finger at each other. So they said, this ends today with all of you. That's according to the assistant state's attorney. And the jury in one of the guys' cases returned their verdict about 6 hours. And the other one returned the second verdict just a few minutes after that. And it was only about 3 hours of total deliberation. So this was on Thursday, which was yesterday at the time I'm making this video. An assistant public defender said that one of the guys had only fired a single shot in the air, referring to statements made to police by two witnesses to the shooting as a reaction to hearing gunshots. And then he had ran. They said he didn't shoot at anybody. Experts testified at the trial that investigators recovered 6 shell casings. 5 were from one gun, and there was a single shell casing from a second gun. And they said which gun had fired the bullets and who was carrying them are still unknown. Nobody knows like who was the one that actually blew down the street. So here's the confusing part about this, man. And the assistant state's attorney is saying like nobody knows who fired the one shot and who fired the multiple shots into the crowd, because whoever fired the one shot really was only firing like in the air. He wasn't firing at anybody. So this is a really weird case, man. But both guys were armed with 9mm handguns, and they said they opened fire with the intention of killing somebody that night and should have known that their actions, firing repeatedly on a busy street filled with people celebrating Independence Day, could have caused someone's death, according to prosecutors. And I disagree. Only one of the guys really was the guy that did that. And so the prosecutors also argued that it didn't really matter which man pulled the trigger, sending the bullet from the barrel of a gun that took Amari's life. And again, I disagree, man. The prosecutors, I mean, they're making their case, but you don't know if they just saw ops and like one of the guys was just like thinking they might blow first or something, or reacting to other gunfire. There's a lot of stuff that could have gone on, but complicating the decision, they said, was a parade of witnesses who took the stand and then walked back their earlier statements and said they no longer recalled what happened. So the defense attorneys called those witnesses unreliable, noting that some were convicted felons. Others, they said, were facing charges. And so they also noted that Amari's father, Antonio Brown, was notably missing from the list of people who testified. So the father did not testify. But who knows if he actually saw anything or knew. And see, this is where it gets really messy. He was facing very intense criticism from Gary McCarthy, who was the police chief at that time, and the mayor for allegedly not aiding the police in their investigation. And his attorney, Antonio Brown's attorney, had rejected that claim at the time. The police also insisted the bullet that killed the boy was intended for the father. But prosecutors told a totally different story at the trial and said that a different man was the intended target. So see, this is like the government disagreeing with itself. Prosecutors told jurors to rely on the testimony of the witnesses gave at the start of the cases when they appeared before grand juries, to use their judgment to determine if the witnesses were telling the truth then, when they recounted many details of what they saw, as opposed to more recent claims that they could no longer recall what happened. So this is like almost 10 years ago. So coupled with this murder, this was only like a few months before Tyshawn Lee was killed. And these two crimes, this one and that one, it had drawn national attention to Chicago's gun violence, which was soaring at the time. And so hundreds of people had attended the 7-year-old's funeral. And there was a U.S. Senator, Mark Kirk, he was a Republican from Illinois, and the U.S. Representative Danny Davis, who was a Democrat, had given their condolences to Amari's family and encouraged the community to rally behind their loss to prevent other shootings like it. So anyways, Rashid was charged weeks after Amari's murder when he was found in Wisconsin after everything just fell apart once these two guys got booked, man. But rest in peace to Amari, another kid who is, caught up in this gang crap. Like I said, a lot of the information that came out at first was very inaccurate, man. And these guys were all foes. And if the father was even the intended target, which in all likelihood he was not, according to prosecutors. So you guys let me know what you think in the comment section, man. And it just goes to show how a lot of this stuff doesn't come to light until much later. And you guys know that was the case with a lot of videos that I put out. Everybody on the street was saying one thing at the beginning, but later, when you get all the police reports and all the witnesses start changing their minds and stuff, a lot of that stuff eventually gets debunked. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section, man. Rest in peace to Amari Brown. This is your boy, Chicago News. I'm out.